The testimony, again, graphic. Ventura's husband, Alex Fine, at one point walking out of court as his wife was peppered with questions about allegedly being raped. Also today, Dawn Richard spotted entering court, the former member of Diddy's girl group, Danity Kane, who prosecutors also called to the stand.
This week has been extremely challenging, but also remarkably empowering and healing for me. I hope that my testimony has given strength and a voice to other survivors and can help others who have suffered to speak up and also heal from abuse and fear. For me, the more I heal, the more I can remember. And the more I can remember, the more I will never forget.
In 2018, on one of fashion's most glamorous nights, Cassie Ventura stepped onto the Met Gala carpet dressed in elegance and mystery. With cameras flashing and millions watching, she smiled, touched her chest, and said softly,
"Final question, is there anything that you may want to confess tonight before you go in?"
I keep everything right here. There you go. Or right here.
There you go. That's how you do it, right?
Yeah.
Y'all have an amazing time.
At the time, people brushed it off as playful, maybe even flirty. But today, after testimony, tapes, and federal evidence, that moment feels like something entirely different. It feels like a silent scream, a desperate message buried behind designer fabric. Now the veil has been ripped off, and the truth beneath the glitz has shaken Hollywood to its core. What Cassie kept right there wasn't fashion, it was fear. And what's finally being said in court is just the beginning. Let's break it all down. The 2018 Met Gala was fashion's biggest night. Cameras flashed, champagne flowed, and celebrities floated through the crowd wrapped in couture and confidence. But somewhere between the red carpet and the after party, something happened that no one talked about, at least not out loud. Cassie appeared on the carpet with her usual grace, standing next to Diddy, smiling for photos, and answering questions like everything was perfect. But in one resurfaced clip, she gestures to her chest and says softly, "I keep everything right here, or right here." At the time, fans thought it was cute or mysterious. But looking back now, that comment feels less like charm and more like code. A subtle signal that something wasn't right. Her posture, her tone, the way she glanced at the camera. People are watching that footage today with a whole new perspective. And the whispers have only grown louder. Behind the scenes that night, rumors suggest something went terribly wrong. According to recent testimony and insider speculation, Cassie may have been cornered in a private area, possibly a bathroom, and confronted in a way that left her shaken. Multiple sources now claim that other celebrities were nearby when it happened, yet no one intervened. That is the part that sticks with people, not just the alleged encounter itself, but the silence surrounding it. How could something like that happen at one of the most heavily photographed events in the world, and yet go completely unnoticed, or worse, ignored? The idea that fashion's most celebrated night might have doubled as a cover for something much darker has thrown social media into a frenzy. And the footage, once dismissed as playful or eccentric, is now being dissected frame by frame. Suddenly, that moment on the carpet doesn't feel so harmless. It feels like a warning that no one understood until now.
Cassie Ventura completing her testimony. She's been pretty stoic, but this afternoon she broke down in tears.
She did, Eva, and she had kept her composure for most of her 4 days on the witness stand under really uncomfortable cross-examination and testimony generally, the most intimate, graphic, demeaning things that you could imagine. She spoke about in open court in front of everybody, and she broke down today when she was asked by prosecutor Emily Johnson on redirect examination whether Sean Combs had her during freak-offs, those marathon drug-fueled sex sessions with male prostitutes.
When Cassie stepped into the courtroom, she wasn't dressed in designer gowns or standing in front of a velvet rope. She was heavily pregnant, almost ready to give birth, and yet she chose that moment to speak on the record. Her appearance alone told a story of exhaustion, strength, and urgency. Facing the man she had spent years beside, she began to describe a life that most people couldn't imagine. Her voice was steady, but the words she spoke cut deeper than anything previously known.
Diddy's ex, Cassie Ventura, who is 9 months pregnant, was on the stand for the second day in a row. The jury was shown photos of past injuries. She also testified the freak-offs left her with sores, frequent UTIs, and stomach problems.
It wasn't just about one night. It was about years of isolation, pressure, and emotional wreckage that she said had left her questioning everything, even her own identity. When the prosecutor asked if she ever felt like an object, Cassie nodded slowly and said she was treated as one for a long time. The courtroom sat in silence as she recalled the most intimate and haunting details of her private life, all while carrying new life inside her. That contrast was devastating. And yet, she didn't hold back. The moment that struck most people came when she was asked about the settlement, the multi-million-dollar agreement that had closed their earlier lawsuit. Cassie didn't dodge the question. She looked the attorney straight in the eye and said, if she could give all the money back in exchange for her freedom, she would. Not because the money didn't matter, but because it could never replace the time, control, and peace that were taken from her. That line turned a private lawsuit into something much bigger. Suddenly, this wasn't just a legal battle, it felt like a personal reckoning, a moment where silence turned into resistance. And just when it seemed like things couldn't get more raw, the testimony moved into territory that hadn't yet been seen by the public. Because the next part wasn't just emotional, it involved surveillance, missing footage, and a video that changed everything. For years, Cassie lived a life that looked polished on the outside, but felt like captivity behind the scenes. According to her testimony, nothing about her daily routine was left to chance. Every move, every interaction, every decision had to pass through someone else's filter. She claimed she was recorded in private moments, told where to go, how to behave, and what to say. But the part that caught everyone's attention in court wasn't just that she felt monitored, it was that these moments, some of them deeply personal, were allegedly filmed without her consent and stored away like weapons. At one point, she said she had to ask for videos to be deleted from devices because too many people had access. And when she made those requests, she was met with calm reassurances, not accountability. She even quoted a reply she received once, "No iCloud, all good." That casual tone made the situation even more unsettling. She wasn't just being watched, she was being archived. Cassie explained that the deeper she fell into this routine, the more her sense of agency began to slip away. What started as a professional relationship turned into a life where saying no longer felt like an option. She described how certain interactions became expected, how resistance led to consequences, and how over time, the line between performance and survival blurred. In one of the most disturbing parts of her testimony, she revealed that these encounters left her with recurring health issues, emotional fatigue, and a constant fear of retaliation. According to her, even her silence was part of the control. She had to be careful with every word, every look, and even her body language, because it could all be used against her. And the more she tried to reclaim her voice, the more isolated she felt. That isolation eventually became the most powerful form of control. But what she said next shifted the focus entirely, because this wasn't just about private recordings or emotional restraint. It was about how she had been made to believe that speaking up could cost her everything. That mindset is what kept her quiet for so long. And understanding that silence is the key to understanding what came next. To the outside world, silence often looks like acceptance. But in Cassie's case, silence was something entirely different. It was a survival mechanism. When asked why she didn't come forward sooner, her answer wasn't dramatic. It was simple, honest, and hard to hear. She was afraid, not just of retaliation, but of what the truth would cost her. She spoke about being embarrassed, about the fear of her family finding out, and about the shame that comes with being trapped in something no one else can see.
According to Cassie, she was embarrassed by it. She even talked about, what would I tell my mom if something like this got out?
She explained that if people had known, she would have been the one answering questions, not the person who caused the harm. That fear kept her from opening up, even when she desperately wanted to. In one moment during the trial, a text message from years earlier was read aloud. In it, Cassie had written, "What would I even tell my mom?" That sentence hung in the air like a confession, because in her world, pain wasn't private. It was something she carried quietly, hidden behind perfectly curated images and red carpet smiles. But the silence didn't come from weakness. It came from knowing how powerful the person on the other side of the story really was. She described moments where she felt like even the smallest pushback could lead to major consequences, whether it was the threat of exposure, the fear of being blacklisted, or the anxiety of simply not being believed. Everything felt like a trap.
So there was a text message shared from 2017 where she said nothing good comes out of freak-offs, and then she says, "You treat me like you're Ike Turner." And that was a nod to the abuse that she says she suffered.
And the longer she stayed quiet, the harder it became to speak at all. Her voice wasn't just stolen, it was replaced with a performance, one where she had to smile on cue, say the right things, and act like nothing was wrong. That kind of performance becomes exhausting. She admitted that over time, she began to question herself, to wonder if she was the problem. That confusion kept her locked in a cycle she couldn't break. But as she told the courtroom, healing made her memory sharper. The more distance she gained, the more clearly she could see what had really happened. And that clarity is what gave her the courage to speak now, in front of cameras, lawyers, strangers, and the very person she once feared. But what made her courage stand out wasn't just the words she spoke, it was what she chose to reveal next. Because what happened to her wasn't just a secret, it was something people saw and ignored. And once the industry's role came into focus, the story turned from personal trauma into public complicity. As Cassie recounted her story, it became clear that this wasn't just about one person's actions behind closed doors. It was about the rooms full of people who saw pieces of the puzzle and chose to look the other way. According to her testimony, there were moments when she showed up to public events visibly shaken or marked, and no one asked questions. She spoke about attending a major entertainment event with bruises on her face and being told by a network executive to smile and keep the energy high. That wasn't an isolated moment. It was a pattern. She described an environment where appearances mattered more than accountability, where power protected itself, and where those closest to the situation had everything to lose by speaking up. This wasn't a case of no one knowing, it was a case of everyone knowing enough to stay silent. That silence didn't just hurt her, it built the foundation for what she says she endured for years. Others are now starting to confirm parts of what Cassie described. Dawn Richard, a former artist under the same management, came forward with her own claims. She said she saw physical altercations happen in real time. She recalled moments where Cassie was visibly scared, trying to avoid confrontation, and how everyone in the room pretended not to notice. Dawn described a specific incident where Cassie was thrown to the ground and curled into herself, trying to avoid further harm, and no one stepped in. She also mentioned being afraid to say anything because of the risks involved. For her, staying silent felt safer than stepping into the storm. And that's what makes this part of the story so disturbing. The industry that celebrates empowerment and progress turned quiet when it mattered most. The very people who stood on stages preaching justice and change remained still, while someone within their circle suffered quietly. But it doesn't stop there, because when Cassie finally tried to reach out for help, even that moment sparked another round of rumors and fear. And that brings us to one of the most unsettling chapters in this entire case. Things reached a boiling point when Cassie reached out to an ex, Kid Cudi, for help. According to her, Diddy found out and exploded, literally. Not long after, Cudi's car blew up outside his house. Cassie testified that Diddy wanted Cudi's friends to see what happens when someone crosses him. The message was loud and clear. Speak out, and there will be consequences. Cudi, to this day, has stayed mostly quiet, but the courtroom buzzed with the implication. This wasn't just manipulation, it was power enforced through fear. Hollywood hadn't just failed Cassie, it had shielded the man who kept her chained. What Cassie described in court wasn't just one person's actions, it was a system designed to protect power at all costs. Behind the scenes, there were managers, assistants, executives, and celebrity friends who all had access to the truth, in fragments. Maybe they didn't see everything, but they saw enough to ask questions, and yet they didn't. According to Cassie, those around her helped maintain the illusion, whether it was through silence, excuses, or pretending not to notice. People who once posted hashtags for social justice were now noticeably quiet. The red carpet stayed busy, the shows kept rolling, and the silence continued. Cassie said she often showed up to parties bruised, emotionally wrecked, and completely exhausted. But instead of concern, she was told to smile. Because in this industry, smiling is what keeps the vibe right. even if you're barely holding it together. Even if you're hiding something that no one wants to admit is happening, the stories she shared were not just about control, but about how easily people can be discarded once they stop playing along. She testified that some tried to help, only to find themselves locked out or pressured to walk away. Others knew exactly what was happening and chose not to get involved because they didn't want to lose access. The silence wasn't passive, it was strategic. In one instance, a BET executive allegedly told her to keep her energy up for the cameras right after she showed up visibly shaken. No one asked what was wrong, they just told her to perform. That kind of environment isn't just toxic, it's dangerous, because it trains people to accept what should never be normal. And it allows those in power to continue unchecked. Cassie wasn't hidden in some private corner of the world. She was on stage, in videos, walking beside someone celebrated at every turn, and still, no one stepped forward. But now that she has spoken, people are starting to revisit those years with new eyes. And as she walked out of that courtroom, everything changed. But what makes this even more powerful is the way she closed her testimony, not as a victim, but as someone reclaiming her voice. And in the final moments of this trial, that voice became something no one could ignore. When Cassie walked out of that courtroom, she didn't just leave as a witness. She walked out as a warning, a statement, a movement. Her lawyer read a message on her behalf. The more I heal, the more I remember. And the more I remember, the more I will never forget.
This week has been extremely challenging, but also remarkably empowering and healing for me. I hope that my testimony has given strength and a voice to other survivors and can help others who have suffered to speak up and also heal from abuse and fear. For me, the more I heal, the more I can remember. And the more I can remember, the more I will never forget.
She's not just talking about her story, she's talking about everyone who's ever been silenced by fame, money, or fear. And now, with tapes surfacing, witnesses speaking, and federal agents involved, this case is bigger than anyone expected. It's no longer about Cassie versus Diddy. It's about what this industry protects and what it hides. So now that you've seen the full picture, ask yourself this. Was Cassie really the only one? How many others stayed quiet? Not because they wanted to, but because they knew what speaking out could cost them. And if the rumors are even half true, how many more recordings, witnesses, or secrets are still buried, waiting to explode into the spotlight? Drop your thoughts in the comments because this isn't over. The trial is still unfolding, and the next revelation could take down more than just one man. If you're watching closely, you can feel it. Something much bigger is coming. Stay tuned.